So episode 2 of Game of Thrones opens up with Dany and the Khalasar, and she's still adjusting to her new life because it can't be easy because she's been essentially sold off into slavery. Now this isn't explicitly said in the show, but in the book she actually contemplates killing herself here. Now Jorah comes over and he attempts to comfort her here, and you can just see in his eyes that he's already falling in love with her. I love Viserys' face. Like, he has the perfect face to be just like the creepiest person just ever. Just look at that little weird sideways smile that he does. I saw this dude on an episode of Doctor Who and I thought, oh my god, they picked the perfect person because he's just, it makes you squirm, doesn't it? So Tyrion wakes up with the dogs, and you get this awesome, iconic scene with Joffrey where Joffrey's talking shit, and he's like, I can't stand the wailing of women, and Tyrion slaps the crap out of him, and he does that little squeak, and he's like, oh, I'm telling mother. Such an iconic, charming scene. Absolutely love it. Then we move on to Tyrion and Cersei and Jaime, the breakfast scene where Tyrion, this scene really shows how perceptive Tyrion is, because he immediately realizes you guys had something to do with this kid falling from the window. Like, he can read the situation so easily, he just automatically knows. That's why I love Tyrion. He's so perceptive, he's so smart. Then we get this scene that's not in the books where Cersei visits Catelyn, and she tells her the story about a child that she had that died shortly after being born. Now, in the books, this does not happen, but Cersei does tell Ned that she was once pregnant with Robert's child, but she had an abortion. So that's a little different, to say the least. Here we get a Cersei that once had Robert's baby and loved that child, but the child was pulled away from her. And in the books, you have a Cersei that, didn't want to have Robert's child so bad that she took moon tea and got rid of it. So here we get Jaime and Jon's last scene together ever, and I love that Jon is intimidated by Jaime, and he should be. Jaime at this point in time is the greatest swordsman in the entire world. If Jaime Lannister wanted to, he could swing his sword twice and off with Jon Snow's head. So I like that Kit Harington acted this in such a way that Jon Snow is definitely intimidated by Jaime. Next we have what is also Jon Snow and Arya's last scene together, where Jon Snow gives Arya the sword needle. And I love the way Arya looks here. This is what I love about the first season. Everything is perfect. Because, later on, people get older. 6 years later, we've got a 17-year-old Maisie Williams still playing a 10-year-old. And it doesn't quite work as well as it does in the first season. And that's not her fault, but I just still can admire how perfect everything looked in the first season. So then we get this awesome scene where Jon Snow comes in to say goodbye to his little brother Bran, and Catelyn Stark is being a huge you-know-what. Now this is even worse in the books. So you got 15-year-old Jon Snow coming to say goodbye to his little brother for what he thinks might be the last time, and then you got Catelyn Stark, which, as Jon Snow is leaving the room, she calls him by his first name for the first time in his life, because normally she'd just be like, bastard, bastard. So she says, Jon, and he looks at her and she says, it should have been you. And ever since I read that, I resented Catelyn. I could never quite get over the way she treated Jon Snow. He's 15 years old. He's coming to say goodbye to his little brother. I get that you're grieving, but how dare you, lady? How dare you? That always bothered me, but they try to make her a little bit nicer in the show so they don't have that it should have been you part, but I honestly wish they would have kept that in because it adds a little bit more depth and it really makes you feel for Jon Snow in that moment. And then we get Jon Snow's final farewells. He hugs his brother Robb goodbye, and then we get the famous scene now where Ned and Jon Snow talk for the last time, and Jon asks about his mom, and Ned says to Jon, when we see each other again, I'll tell you about your mother. Now, a lot of people think that's ironic, and it is ironic, but me personally, I'm still holding out hope. I'm holding out hope that Ned and Jon will see each other again, and that Ned Stark will tell Jon Snow about his mother. Don't ask me how, because I may or may not be planning on revealing that later on how exactly I think that's going to go down. So the next scene, we got Eddard Stark and Robert Baratheon, they're sitting at the table and they're discussing Daenerys Targaryen. She's wed a Dothraki horse lord, and it could be potentially dangerous. And Ned Stark's like, yo, what do you want me to do? We can't do anything about it. And Robert's like, we got to do something about it. So this is a thing in the show that comes up over and over again. People are always like, yeah, what about this Targaryen chick? And everybody's all like, yeah, she's nothing. And now she's like one of the most formidable forces in the entire world. So they probably should have listened earlier on and done something about it, but hindsight is 2020. So here we got Jon Snow and Tyrion on their way to the Wall, and this is the point where Jon Snow first starts to get a glimpse of the people that he will be around when he's at the Wall. He's going to be around rapers and thieves, because he thinks that up until this point he's kind of delusional, and he thinks that it's all going to be just glory because his uncle Benjen is a member of the Night's Watch. But Tyrion is kind of breaking this delusion and saying you're going to be with the lowest of the low when you get to the Wall. So Jon Snow definitely has a lot to learn from this point on. Back at Winterfell, Cat is still mourning over Bran, and Maester Luwin walks in and he's like, we gotta do these appointments. And she's like, I don't care about the appointments. And Robb walks in and he's like, I'll do the appointments. And then he sees a fire outside. And then suddenly this dude attacks and tries to kill Bran, but the wolf isn't having none of that. Summer attacks the dude, rips out his throat, and he just goes and cuddles up next to Bran. And Catelyn's like, what the heck just happened? Now, they never explain in the show who exactly sent this dude to kill Bran, but in the books it actually is explained, so if you don't want to know this, then skip ahead like 15 seconds. The person that sent this assassin to kill Bran is none other than Joffrey. Now, apparently Joffrey overhears his dad, Robert Baratheon, saying something along the lines of, it would be better if Bran was dead than be a cripple. And so he tries to impress his dad by sending an assassin to kill Bran. Joffrey is twisted in the head. He's messed up. He's not okay, if you haven't already noticed. So of course he would do some crazy effed up crap like this to try and impress his dad, because he's never gotten the love from Robert that he needed and required as a child, as a son. So he wants to impress his dad in any way that he can, and he thought that killing Bran would be a good way, apparently. So I've always really liked this scene with Daenerys and her handmaidens. You get Doria telling Daenerys the story of the moon that was an egg, and it cracked and 1,000 dragons poured out. And the other Dothraki girls laugh at her and they're like, oh no, Moon is goddess. You see, Doria, she's not actually a Dothraki. The other two girls are, so she doesn't really know all the Dothraki stories and culture, so she's from a completely different place. But I do like her story about the moon being an egg a lot. I like that a lot better than the story of the dragons coming from the 14 fires of Valyria, actually. So Catelyn has started to get suspicious ever since the assassin came. She goes searching around the tower where Bran fell, and she sees in the tower a strand of long golden hair. Now, where did that come from? She gathers up the only people that she can trust, Robb, Theon, Maester Luwin, and she says, I don't think Bran fell from that tower. I think he was pushed. And she presents the evidence, and they come to the determination that somebody gave this dude this blade. This is a dragon bone blade, and it's made of Valyrian steel. There's no way this dude just had this fancy blade just laying around. So Catelyn decides that she must go to Winterfell to find Ned and to tell him about what she has discovered. So next scene, we got Arya teaching Dany to have sex, and Dany and Khal Drogo make love for the first time, because before that it was basically rape. And now we are to this scene. The scene that solidified most people's hatred for Sansa and Joffrey. So we got the King's party. They've stopped at this village to rest, and we got Sansa and Joffrey going on a little walk, and they come across Arya playing a friendly game with the butcher's boy. And Joffrey wants to be a douchebag. He wants to bully this little boy, and Arya's not having any of this. She's like, you can't bully my friend. So she hits Joffrey, and then when Joffrey attacks Arya, Nymeria gets involved, and Nymeria isn't having none of that crap. So Nymeria bites the crap out of Joffrey, and Joffrey turns into a whimpering little baby Please don't hurt me. Please don't hurt me. And you know, Sansa's totally okay with this whole thing. She's totally okay with Joffrey bullying this kid. But then when Joffrey gets attacked, she's all like, oh no, my prince. You know what? Screw Joffrey and also screw Sansa in this instance. You know, they both can get out of here with that mess. So Arya obviously runs off, and then you get one of the saddest scenes in Game of Thrones history where Arya has to tell Nymeria to go away, and it's so freaking sad. Everybody's looking for Arya, and then she's finally found, and King Robert's like, you know, kids fight, you know, it is what it is, but then we can always count on Cersei, can't we? We can always count on Cersei to be like, no, we gotta kill the dog. So Cersei orders the death of Sansa's direwolf, Lady, who, by the way, is totally innocent. Lady wasn't even there. Lady didn't do anything. But still, Cersei's like bloodthirsty, so she's got like, no, we gotta kill that dog. And so, of course, Ned's gonna do it himself because the wolf is northern and it deserves a northern death. And when he kills Lady, Bran awakes. Now, I have a love-hate relationship with this episode. It's a good episode, but there is a lot of filler. There is a lot of building up to, you know, what happens next. I don't like seeing direwolves get killed, which is why season 6 really bothered me. But you know, here it's like animals don't do anything. Animals are just there, just trying to chill. And, you know, people always come around to screw everything up. You know, that poor direwolf. You know, this is so sad, but whatever. I give this episode a 9 out of 10. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe for more ideas of Ice and Fire.